Привет не спящим. Я надеюсь, за эту ночь я закончу с открытием всего и вся в Италии и двинусь дальше. Итак, посмотрим, что принесет нам эта ночь.
Formed in exam conditions. But it is that one line in the guidance that says in circumstances where the centre assessment grade, and that's jargon for the predicted grades from teachers, was lower than the mock grade, the student will receive that. It's a conclusion that they've arrived at. The basis for it, it's hard to know, but they've obviously had to turn this guidance round in very short order. And it's impossible, of course, in this situation where no student has taken an exam to please everybody, I guess, and there will still be some who feel that they've been treated unfairly.
Where's Labour in this, Jonathan?
Well, they are being further critical of the government's approach, particularly around that promise Gavin Williamson, the Education Secretary, made to allow students a triple lock. And if just to remind you, that was a promise to students that they could take either their allocated grade or their mock exam grade or the result of an exam that they can take in the autumn, whichever was the highest. Now, with this anomaly, if you like, Labour say that triple lock guarantee is unravelling. They're accusing the government of coming up with the solutions on the back of cigarette packets, and they're calling on ministers to take urgent action in the coming days to stop youngsters losing out. They have said that the government should consider scrapping the whole grade moderation system and reverting to teachers' predictions. They're not necessarily saying that the government should do that and that it would solve all the problems. So politically, Labour are hedging their bets a bit because they're not saying if we were in government, this is what we would do. They're sort of waiting for each move to happen and then overall being obviously very critical of the government's approach. But in a situation where no student has taken an exam, there is no blueprint for that. Nevertheless, the government's approach has been criticised, certainly politically speaking, from all other parties here at Westminster.
And there's been a response from the Department for Education tonight, Jonathan.
Yes, interesting to see what they have had to say, pointing out that they're pleased that Ofqual has given this guidance because it will allow students who feel that students whose mock exam results were higher than their allocated grades to appeal, but they do point out that this is a decision Ofqual has taken in its role as regulator, and that in rare circumstances, they say, where the centre assessed or predicted grades lower than the mock, it would be more appropriate for the student to instead receive the centre assessed grade. So a little bit of an attempt, I think, there to take a step back from by the Department for Education and the government and say this is the regulator's decision.
OK, Jonathan Blake, thank you very much indeed. Said it last night, I'll say it tonight again. What this network should be doing and what we are doing is getting as many of you on air as possible who this story affects. And that means if you're a student, we need you on 5 Live this weekend. If you're a parent, we really want to hear from you. 08085 909 693. Amy. Hello, Amy.
Hiya.
Hi. So what's your situation, Amy?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I'm a year behind everyone else. I had an unfortunate accident last March, which meant I couldn't sit my A-level exams last year. So then
what
this year,
happened to you?
I had a skiing accident where I broke my back.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah, so that obviously didn't go to plan. But I hoped that I'd be able to, do my exams this year and prove myself that I could get the grades that I needed. And obviously results they came around. I was on track to get 3 A's to study medicine at Lancaster University. I actually came out with 3 C's.
So when you say you were on track, what were you predicted and what were your grades over the years?
Yeah, so I was predicted an A-star in 2 A's. As most students do when they are in college and doing their A-levels, we do have ups and downs, but majority of the time I got a range of A-stars, A's and B's, which does look good in terms of getting those predicted grades of A-star and 2 A's.
So, A-star and 2 A's, did you do any mock exams?
The last set of mock exams I sat in college in mock, like an exam condition, was last year 5 weeks after I broke my back, which is where I got 3 Bs. So for the situation, I feel like that was probably the best I could have achieved, considering where I was at that moment.
Sure. So you were in a life-changing accident. You got 3 Bs. Your teachers are predicting you an A star and 2 As.
Yeah.
And what were you given?
3 Cs. So
And tell me what that means.
Yeah.
Tell me what that means to you.
Obviously, it's quite frustrating for me because I didn't get into either my firm or insurance choice on for university. So I was then stuck for what to do next. So, as I think a lot of students have been on the phones to universities, seeing what options I've got next. But it's quite difficult because it's not what you want to do, and I won't be able to go to med school this year and study medicine. So it's quite heartbreaking for me, and it's quite frustrating because I feel like I don't have any control over what's going on. All I can really do is, share my story and hope that the government listen to what we're trying to say.
You must be furious.
Yeah, it is. It's something that, as I said before, it is out of my control, and I feel that it isn't fair on students, as although they've offered the the mock grades now, it's still not the best option because sometimes you have a bad week and you don't do well in a mock exam, so your mock grades might not be very good, or so I just don't think that's the best option for students. And now where I am at the moment, although I can appeal the grades that I got, it's still too late, as now I can't go to university this year and do the course I want to do. So appeal isn't, although it'll give me some better grades, it's still not the best option and the option that I was hoping for.
And do you understand how they've given you these grades?
No, I'm in shock about why they've given me the grades that I got. It could have been part of to do with the area that I went to college in. It could have been to do with, just the levelling out, because they did the certain percentages of A's and A stars and B's. So I could have just been in a bad situation and got put in that cohort of students that got C's. So I'm not quite sure as to why I got the grades that I did, but which is, again, it's an unanswered question, and I don't think we are going to get answers soon about it.
Off, Amy, studying, does it put you off working hard? Or are you determined to defeat these people that are doing this to you? Don't let them stop you.
I would say, obviously, I'm not put off by it. I am to prove to them that I am capable of getting the grades that I was predicted, and I am capable of getting into the university that I wanted to go to and to study the course that I wanted to go to. So I do have a lot of determination and a lot of fight inside of me to prove to people that I actually can get to where I want to be and I can get the grades. So it's not by any means, put me off going into further education or anything like that.
And you'll be confident with your appeal, right?
Yeah, I am. I do feel confident with my appeal. I think that I've got a good chance of getting good grades and being able to hopefully further my path onto medicine.
Thank you so much for talking to us tonight, Amy, and I wish you well.
It's all right. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Martha next. Hello, Martha.
Hello, nice to speak
Hi.
to you.
Nice to speak to you. I don't want to sound patronising here, but I feel so sorry for you all. Because, there has not been a student on 5 Live who I have spoken to who has not been articulate and passionate and confident, and yet their grades are not representing what the predictions have been. So tell me your situation.
Exactly. My situation is my teachers fully expected me to get AAB if I'd taken my exams, and I applied to university courses that had that requirement of AAB. And then on results day, I found out that I'd been rejected from both my firm and insurance choices because I'd received the results of A, B, C. I'd been downgraded in 2 of my subjects by 1 grade from what my centre assessed grades were and what my teachers believed I could get. So I'm in the situation
And if you
of
look
being...
carefully at what Ofqual say, because I was looking at some of their documentation, they give out statistics about how often they are likely to predict accurate grades within 1 grade. And, you know, I'm sure you feel like screaming to them, but 1 grade can make the difference between getting into a university of your choice and not.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I was in the same situation as Amy of having to call universities, but because, you know, I have been lowered by just a few grades, the university says that they can't have me. So it is that frustrating thing of having just missed out because of what I feel that this, you know, what seems to be a random algorithm has done to me.
What did they give you a C in?
I'm sorry?
What did they give you a grade C in?
History.
And you were predicted a B?
I was, yeah. That's what my teachers believed I would get.
Are you going to fight them, Martha?
I am, yes. I'm going into the appeals process, and with Ofqual's new announcement today about mock grades, me and my teachers are hoping to appeal on the grounds of my coursework. So basically it's just hoping that that goes through now, because if it's not successful, then it means that I'm taking a completely unexpected gap year.
Martha, thank you for talking to us. The Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, says he is considering legal action over what he says has been an unfair system. But are there any grounds to legally challenge this? Samantha Hale is an education solicitor with the law firm Simpson Miller. Good evening, Samantha.
Hi.
Hi. So on what basis can students contemplate legal action?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would say is that with anything like this, it needs to be looked at as the individual circumstances. Before contemplating legal action, we are strongly advising young people to do actually what I've just heard sort of the students that you've spoken to already say that they're doing, speaking to universities in the first instance, speaking to schools or colleges to look at the appeals process, and to try that process, and of course if they need to, you know, if they want to, then there are lawyers out there who specialise in this area of law if they do want to have a further chat with somebody about that.
But the basics around whether there could be any legal action, and obviously we need to generalise here, Samantha, because we can't get into the specifics of anybody's case, but in a system which is not applying a test on that specific student, but is generalising and taking data from students who have had nothing to do with them, in other words, previous year students. Is that the basis for potential legal action, that a student is being judged not on themselves, but on other people from previous years?
Yeah, I mean, so when you are looking at the system that is used, I think the first thing to be asking is it fair? And I think the statistics that have come out have clearly shown that there is an unfairness to this system and what it has done in terms of the downgrading. And certainly when you're looking at legal grounds for any kind of challenge,
And how do you prove fairness? Is that not subjective?
yes, but I suppose the bigger issue here is, I suppose not the bigger issue, but the thing we need to focus on is the individual cases, and the system itself is clearly has got big gaps in that fairness. But it is just a case of the young people doing what we suggested, speaking to the universities, speaking to the schools and colleges, and just trying to challenge their individual case.
And do they need a lot of money to take legal action?
Well, we're not recommending individuals take legal action in all cases at the moment. Like I said, there is a process in place. Now, that process itself, we have concerns about that. So, for instance, the individuals are having to rely on the schools and colleges to help them do it because they don't have an individual right of appeal themselves. I understand that there isn't going to be any charge to the individuals in going through that process with the schools and colleges. If it seems that somebody needs to bring in legal action, then obviously any solicitors at that point can discuss any kind of legal fees with the young people then. But certainly our first port call is to recommend that they go to the schools and colleges and discuss their specific cases with them.
Are you already working on any cases?
I can't discuss anything in terms of caseloads.
Okay. And just finally, I guess people will be wondering about the time frame of this, because often, court processes take an awful long time. Could there be any legal process that could be fast-tracked around this to set precedent, Samantha, as to how the courts are viewing what the government's doing?
Well, with any kind of legal process, if we're talking about procedures, legal procedures can take time. Sometimes, depending on the grounds, they can be fast-tracked, and sometimes they can't. So at the moment, I can't give a specific answer to that because this is all sort of very general, it's all new, everything is happening at the moment. Obviously quite quickly in terms of the results haven't long been out. We're now seeing about this unfairness. But I think so one of the young people that you've just spoken to made a really good point that yes, even if you take the legal process out of this and put that to one side, the appeals process itself is time consuming. And that's the unfortunate thing with any of these things when you're trying to take either legal action or take practical steps to try and resolve things. Quite often they take time, and unfortunately these young people don't really have that time because the universities are making the decisions now.
Okay, Samantha, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Well, as we've been hearing tonight, Ofqual now say where a written mock exam wasn't taken, it will consider other assessments too, allowing students' final grades to be improved. Jeff Barton is General Secretary of the Association of School and College Leaders.
Well, we're still looking at the detail of it, but I think our first impression is that it feels pretty surreal. It was always going to be quite a big ask, wasn't it, to be able to say, what constitutes a mock exam, given as an English teacher for 32 years, the way you put together a mock exam and the way you use that and mark that will be different from one teacher to another. So we've been waiting for the criteria. And we also knew it was going to be a problem that if you hadn't done your mock exams, would you be penalised? And what this guidance seems to do is essentially to say anything goes. So if you have done a formal mock, then that will count. If you haven't done a formal mock, then something else will count. Now, it's worth reminding ourselves that all of these things will already have been used in the process teachers have gone through in order to submit the grades in the first instance. And I think there will be some people worrying about the bureaucracy and the time that this is going to take, and actually saying, well, wouldn't it be better in that case for the government simply to have said, let's trust the teachers and go back to the centre assessed grade?
He's calling on universities to be more generous this year in accepting students who did not get the grades they need.
What this appeals process ought to mean, if it was a quick appeals process, is that actually you could get young people into university and their courses as quickly as possible. And I think the real solution to this would be for universities to have a greater generosity of spirit. So, for example, I've heard from a student today, she got 2 A stars and 2 A's. She wanted to go to Oxford, she wanted to do maths, and she was turned down. The reason? Because she didn't get an A star in further maths. Her second university choice, Imperial, has turned her down. Now, that's really not good enough. She's first generation, pupil premium, disadvantaged child. We need those young people to be given their university places, accepting that maybe they didn't get the grades they needed, instead of building a huge bureaucracy, which is being suggested today, in order that we can then focus on the most important thing, bringing our children and young people back into school and getting back to some kind of normality.
I want you to hear this. A-level student Nina had her exams downgraded. She was predicted ABB and was downgraded to 3 Ds. She was speaking on BBC Radio 4's Any Questions, and she confronted the schools minister, Nick Gibb. She said, "You've ruined my life."
I have no idea how this has happened. It's got to be a mistake, as I have never been a D-grade student. I feel like my life has been completely ruined, as I cannot get into any universities with such grades or even progress further in my life. I'm in that rare category, as I've not just been downgraded 2 grades, but 3 grades lower than one of my predictors.
Yes, and that is rare. 60% of the grades awarded are what the teacher.
The system isn't
said.
working, Nick Gibb, for
well, hang on,
is it?
I do want to come back to that. 35% have been changed by that. But it won't ruin your life. It will be sorted, I can assure you.
Do you personally feel like, in your gut, that I deserve those grades? Does it seem normal? Does it seem like a mistake? Or do you think it's due to lots of things they've taken into account?
No, it does seem to me, from what you've said, that it sounds like a mistake. We always knew that there would be issues, and that's why we have this very robust process in place. It will be robust. Your school will appeal, they'll go through the system, and if it's clearly not right, then the grades will be adjusted and you'll find your place at the next stage of your career.
What do you make of that? 08085 909 693. We'll talk more after the news.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at 11 o'clock. This is Adam Porter. The exams regulator in England has said it will consider the results of unofficial tests set by teachers as part of appeals against GCSE and A-level grades. Ofqual has set out the grounds on which schools can challenge pupils' grades based on their mock results, after 40% of teachers' A-level predictions were lowered by a moderating process. It said non-exam assessment marks may also be considered in some cases. Members of the royal family have taken part in commemorations marking 75 years since Japan's surrender ended the Second World War. The Prince of Wales led a 2-minute silence at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire during an event attended by veterans and their families. A message from the Queen thanked those who fought so valiantly. In a TV address, Prince William urged people never to forget the sacrifices made by so many to secure a better future.
As we look back, we must not forget our responsibility to learn the lessons of the past and ensure that the horrors of the Second World War are never repeated. We owe that to our veterans, to their families, and to the generations who will come after us.
A further 3 people have died in the UK with coronavirus. The total number of people to die within 28 days of testing positive for COVID-19 now stands at 41,361. Anti-government protests have continued in Belarus as demonstrators expressed their anger at the disputed result of the presidential election. Crowds gathered outside state TV buildings in Minsk, calling for an end to censorship. There have also been large demonstrations outside a metro station where a protester died earlier this week. Witold Dobrowolski is a Polish photojournalist who was covering the protests when he was arrested and detained for 3 days.
I lost my conscience. I was beaten many times. And then they sent us to the place where there was torture, like next 15 hours for like at least 300 people were detained there and beating, torture.
South Africa is lifting bans on the sale of alcohol and tobacco imposed to try to control the spread of coronavirus. The country has recorded more than half of Africa's infections, with more than 11,000 deaths. President Cyril Ramaphosa said there would be tough restrictions on where and when alcohol was sold.
Alcohol will be permitted for on-site consumption in licensed establishments only up to 10 p.m. Liquor outlets will be allowed to sell alcohol for off-site consumption from Monday to Thursday during the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. only.
In football, Manchester City have been knocked out of the Champions League. They've been beaten 3-1 by Lyon in their quarter-final in Lisbon. Lyon will face Bayern Munich in the semis. BBC News, it's 3 minutes past 11.
Available now on BBC Sounds.
On the ground.
The peace of a troubled world and the hopes of an oppressed people now depend on you.
Investigating one of the most infamous friendly fire incidents of the Iraq War.
I heard the drone.
They're the only people that really know what happened.
If anyone's ever heard an A-10 fire before, you'll know what that may be.
Nobody north of here, no friendlies.
The A-10 is an amazing aircraft, but left to their own devices, they're dangerous.
It's 17 years, but this has stayed with them.
It's changed their lives forever.
On the ground.
Listen now on BBC Sounds.
Stephen Nolan on BBC Radio 5 Live.
Tonight we've heard once again from students affected by the downgrading of A-level grades.
I'm in shock about why they've given me the grades that I got. You know, it could have been part of to do with the area that I went to college in. It could have been to do with just the levelling out, because they did the certain percentages of A's and A stars and B's. So I could have just been in a bad situation and got put in that cohort.
I was in the same situation as Amy of having to call universities. But because, you know, I have been lowered by just a few grades, the university says that they can't have me. So it is that frustrating thing of having just missed out because of what seems to be a random algorithm.
Almost 40% of teachers' predictions downgraded. We've also heard how Ofqual intends to make mock exam results form the basis of appeals.
Tonight, there is more guidance, more detail and a bit more clarity for students who are hoping to appeal against the grades they've been given, whose results were revised down from the grades predicted by their teachers, appealing on the basis of their mock exam grades if they were higher than the grades they've been allocated.
Here's how to get in touch.
This is BBC 5 Live. Call free 08085 909 693. Text 85058. Text will be charged at your standard message rate. Plus, see our privacy notice. bbc.co.uk/5 Live.
5 Live.
Now, Thursday wasn't just A-level results day. Those who had been studying for their BTECs were expecting to find out their grades too. And although many of them received the results, there are some students who are still waiting to hear what they've got. The examination body, Pearson, has told us in a statement that they're aware some BTEC students experienced a delay in receiving the results, and they understand the frustration this has caused. They say they're working closely with the students and colleges involved to look into this urgently and provide the results as soon as they can. Ellie is one of those still waiting for the results. Hello, Ellie.
Hi.
Hi, so Pearson apologising, but I guess that's no good to you, Ellie. You want to know what you've got?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's 3 days ago that I should have heard what I've got to be able to tell my my university, but I'm sat here waiting to hear really.
So when you logged on Thursday, what does the system say?
There was nothing. It had my individual grades for my units with nothing next to it, so I was sat there thinking that there was something wrong with my college programme, so I had to call up my college individually and actually say to them, look, I can't see my results. And they said to me then that the Pearson exam board had actually called up the night before and told that it was a technical error. So.
And did you have any heads up? Has there been any communication from Pearson through anybody to you as to what's going on?
Not from Pearson, no. But from my college, the only thing they could tell me on that day was that hopefully by the end of the day that I would have had some results and that they would have chased them up if they hadn't. But we finally got an apology on Friday on behalf of my college for the delay. But the only thing that Pearsons have said to us is that if we're stressed or anxious, to call Childline, which for me isn't very helpful being a 19-year-old to girl really.
And what impact has this had on you?
It's made me really angry. Pearsons expect us to be committed to complete assignments on time, yet Pearsons couldn't even commit to getting our results in. It leaves us in a lot of uncertainty because I don't know why we haven't received them yet. There's no clear answer, there's no clear explanation, there's no apology, and there's no update. So I don't know where to go to next. Like, I can't even let my unis know, you know. I can speak on behalf of my fellow students that it actually beats up your mental health quite a bit, especially when you've been waiting results for so long and then to be told you still can't have them. I think, you know, as a BTEC student, seeing everybody else get their results, you know, we feel quite forgotten, really.
Well, that's the thing, Ellie, isn't it? That we hear so much talk these days about how important looking after our mental health is, and it is important. We hear so much talk from government and across society about how we need to protect young people's mental health, and look at the stress and distress that is being forced upon young people throughout this whole grade and examination result fiasco.
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty bad to see all the A-level results being opened the other day, and seeing that everyone didn't actually get exactly what they wanted. But it makes me worry as well to see, what if I don't get what I want either?
And the universities are waiting for your results, aren't they? They're
emailing us asking where they are. I think some of my friends in my class as well are missing out on clearing opportunities because we still don't have our results. We're unable to go to clearing to access them. There's not enough space now. They've all been taken up, so we're kind of left with what's left.
Right. So that is a real disadvantage you're being put into.
Yeah, we're at major disadvantage, and yet nobody seems to be talking about it.
Have you got anybody fighting for you?
A few. I think our colleges are trying to help us as much as they can, which is a good thing. But they can only tell us what they know, and if Pearson's aren't able to contact them to let them know, then we're kind of stuck in a catch-22, really. So,
Ellie, I hope you get your results soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for talking to me. Jenny Cameron, performing arts teacher at Stage Door Learning. It's a performing arts school which offers BTEC diplomas. Hello, Jenny.
Hi.
Hi. So, nearly all of your students have received grades lower than you reckon they should have done.
That's right, yeah, all of them have. So I had 13 students in Year 13 this year, and all of the grades have been pulled down based on what we were expecting.
Talk me through that.
Okay, so unlike A-levels, the BTEC teachers were not asked to give a predicted grade. We were asked to submit a rank order, which A-level teachers had to as well. And also we had to submit the grades for the modules that students had completed. There was something slightly weird with the rank order because if you think about an A-level class, so just Year 13 students, they would have to rank those students. What BTEC teachers were asked to do was to rank every student on the course, no matter what year group they were in. So I had to submit a rank order, which was the Year 13s and the Year 12s, which makes absolutely no sense at all. And Pearson weren't able to give us any kind of justification for that. So those.
Sorry, you had to.
Who is, bearing in mind we had to do this, it wasn't the end of the year. A student who was perhaps 7 months into the course compared to a student who was 19 months into the course, it was an almost impossible task. So the A-levels haven't had to do that. So straight away, there's no kind of parity between A-levels and BTECs there. So then we had to put in the unit grades that they'd already received. And the way that BTECs work is people think that it's entirely coursework, but it's not. The government changed the way that BTECs worked in 2016. So the course that my students have done had quite a high percentage was external assessment. So they had some of the external assessment in Year 12, and then the ones they were supposed to do in Year 13 were cancelled because of COVID. So there was a fair amount of accurate information. So anything that they'd done in Year 12 had been externally verified by Pearson, and there were these externally assessed grades units on top of that. So we had to do those. And then what came out of it, on results day, was that all of the grades we were expecting were at least one, if not two, in some cases, grades lower. And what Pearson has done is they've looked at those cancelled assessments and they've given all of my students the lowest possible grade for those external assessments that they weren't able to fit. So those are more heavily weighted than the other units. So
sorry, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean. They've given all of your students the lowest possible grade. What do you mean?
Okay, so BTECs, the one that my students take is split into 13 different modules, and each of those modules is marked with a pass, a merit, or a distinction. And if you want to equate that to A-levels, the distinction is an A, and a pass is basically an A-level grade E. They're not A, B, C, they're A, C, and then E. So we weren't asked to give predicted grades for the cancelled exams. Pearson have calculated those, but then when we got the results, they gave us individual grades for those separate units. And the ones that were cancelled, all of my students have been given a pass, which is the lowest possible grade, even though the vast majority of them had nothing but distinctions and merits for all of the other units. So Pearson have assumed that they would have done worse in those two final units than they had at any other point during the 2 years, and that's their grades down. And it just makes no sense. It's completely bewildering.
And upsetting.
And really upsetting, yeah, because I've got kids who've worked really, really hard, and we're a specialist upsetting. So the students have to audition to get to stage door, and they work really hard. It's not necessarily to do with their BTEC, but for example, on Monday of this week, even though we're in the summer holidays, they did a sellout show in an outdoor venue. They'd learnt the whole show in lockdown, and they performed it in an outdoor space they'd never rehearsed it to sort of a 300 people audience. So they're really hard-working, really talented young people, and I'm outraged that Pearson have just kind of put this blanket, well, we need you to fit into an algorithm, therefore we're giving you the lowest possible grade. It's really upsetting.
Amy is one of your students. Hello, Amy.
Yep. Hello.
Hi. So how does it feel, Amy?
Like Jenny said, it's really upsetting and very annoying. I know me and my friends, we work so hard, and it is a specialist setting, so we're doing this because it's what we want to do as a career, and it feels extremely frustrating that like something that we work so hard for, it's not what it should be.
We asked Pearson to come on tonight. I'm just kind of thinking, why on earth would this examination body not come on the radio? We've got a statement from them saying they understand the frustration. Well, how about them coming on and putting themselves up for questions and being accountable tonight to people like you? It must be deeply frustrating for you, Amy.
Yeah, I think it really is. I mean, I'm lucky I got my results and I got into uni, but I think I can't even imagine what it could be like for someone who hasn't got their results or hasn't got their answers, hasn't been able to get into uni, and I think it is so frustrating. I was lucky I got downgraded by two grades.
Yeah.
But I just can't even imagine what it could be like for other people. I just feel so bad and I have so much empathy for them. But obviously it's still frustrating for me because it's work that I've put in and I've worked so hard to get that grade, and it's something that means a lot to me and I still haven't got it. So yeah, just very, very annoying.
What would you say to them if they were sitting in front of you tonight, Pearson and this government?
I think, it's such a difficult question. I think how many people who have worked so ridiculously hard haven't got what they need. And, still pushing for things that they really, really want and to get into university and stuff like that. And it makes me so angry. I just want them to know how unfair it is.
You see, I think the mental health aspect of this so far, I've heard it mentioned, but I wonder if it's being given the gravitas that it actually deserves. Because you take a cohort of young people in this country and you lock them down for a number of months to protect their health like everybody else. And so therefore the government and companies like Pearson understand the psychological pressure that there has been on you and your friends and your age group before this exam fiasco happened. And then load on top of that the unfair treatment of young people in this country. What do they expect will happen as a result? There are going to be major mental health problems with some young people in this country. How could there not be?
There really, really is going to be, and I think it's ridiculous. I think it really, really is. I mean, how can you expect anyone to be okay with it, it's genuinely just so upsetting, and I'm really fortunate that I have the support of Jenny, and I've gotten into uni and it's an amazing uni, and I have my friends and family, but I feel so bad for people who don't have that and who have been in lockdown and it's affected their mental health, and then they've had to go through being downgraded or not getting what they deserve.
Are you concerned about your future?
I was really concerned before we got our results. I'm concerned for people I know's future and people who haven't got their grades. I'm really concerned. I think it really is going to affect people's mental health, and I know personally for me, because I've got into my top choice uni, I know that I'm set in what I'm doing, but I know there are so many people who aren't, and it's just not there.
Amy, thank you for talking to us tonight. I wish you well in the future. Jenny Cameron, there's yet another articulate, smart young student who feels betrayed by what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And Amy is wonderful, but all of the students at Stage Door are, and Amy is very much sort of typical of them, in that, you know, she's being very pragmatic. She did get into university, but her grades were still 2 whole grades lower than they should have been, and that's not fair. You know, and adults perhaps say, oh, well, it doesn't matter because she got into university, but it's not the point. When you've worked really, really hard for 2 years, you expect that you will get the grades that you deserve. And yeah, she's been betrayed by the government and this algorithm. You know, having looked at the various data that's come out over the last couple of days, there's so much arbitrary rules about it that have impacted on Amy and all of her classmates. So because the computer said that was what they should get, and it's just not fair. And yes, it's an appeal, but I've got absolutely no guarantee that's going to go anywhere. And of course, Gavin Williamson has said about this thing about mock exams. Well, BTEC students don't take mock exams, so we haven't got that safety net. So we're having to fight it on the grounds of exceptional circumstance, which I don't know whether we'll get through. Hopefully we will, but you know, it took me all day yesterday to put a case together to try and get the results that these students deserve. It's really frustrating.
Jenny, thank you very much. Thank you. 20 past 11, 5 Live, 08085 909 693. If you can help us continue to build the story around the UK, whichever nation you're in. I know that there are different rules in Scotland to Northern Ireland to Wales to England. Please pick up the phone to us tonight, 08085 909 693. Now, universities have to make decisions on which A-level students they will accept, even though many could still appeal their results. The University of Leicester has taken the step of announcing it'll offer places based on students' mock A-level results, including through clearing, regardless of whether they appeal their results. Their Vice-Chancellor is Professor Nishan Kanagaraja. Nishan, good evening.
Good evening, Steve.
So why have you taken this decision, Nishan?
I think the key reason is we wanted to support the students. As you have heard, it has been a very difficult time for the students having to go through the lockdown and the anxiety how their performance is going to be judged. So we felt it is important we support the student during this time, and I think it was, in my view, unfortunate that 36 hours before the results were due to be released, there were information being given in terms of the appeal process and how the mock results could be used to improve the grading. And I don't think that was fair on the students who are very anxious about their future and also who are not clear what the whole appeal process is going to be like. And we felt we have a lot of experience in processing applications, in determining who has the highest potential to come to the university and be successful. And clearly, A-level results is one of the indicators that helps us in making that judgment. But given the anxiety the students have and the lack of information we were getting, we felt the right thing to do is to give the students the opportunity to give us the mock information, mock results, which we will validate with the school, so that they don't have to wait till 7th of September to get the outcome, because the university places get filled up very quickly. We should support the students to make that decision and give them confirmation.
Hello, Nishan. I've been learning quite a lot about this over the last few days. Hours and hours of talking to different people about this. And what some of the students have been telling me is that often mock exams are not representative of a child's actual ability, for this reason, that there are some schools who, in order to give kids, to scare them into working even harder, they give those children the hardest possible mock paper they could, while some other schools do not take that tactic. And therefore, if you're looking at mock results from different schools, there's no consistency there. And you might, while it's not deliberate, Nishan, be discriminating against a child whose teacher tried to give them that kick up the backside and tried to scare them and give them a nigh on, impossible mock paper to achieve really well at.
Yeah, I think we all acknowledge that there is no substitute for our tried and tested method that we have for admitting students into university this year. So what we have now got is to use additional information to help the student to make that decision whether they should come into university this September, October. And I understand there are variations, but I think it is not simply the mock result. We talk to the school, we will get the additional information to validate the mock result. They have a lot of information about the student, so they are able to give us the of that student's potential. So mock result is not the only information we use in making that decision.
Do you think all universities could do what you're doing?
I think we should certainly think how we should support the students, and given that there was not much information about how the appeal process was going to work, I think it was a very anxious time for students. I don't think there is any new information that the appeal process can use that we couldn't use right now in terms of determining who should come to the university. So I think other universities could have taken the approach, and as you probably have seen, some other universities are beginning to take that approach now, so which I'm very pleased about. But I'm very pleased in Leicester it has worked well. We have, in the last 2 days, we have been able to offer places to 220 students on the basis of what we announced on Wednesday.
You say you have years of experience, Nishan, as to assessing a child's ability. Based on those years of experience, how do you feel about what Scotland's done, which is to trust teachers' predictions for A-level results? Would you have been comfortable going with that?
So I think the same issues that you highlighted about mock result is relevant for predictions as well. There is significant variability in terms of teachers' prediction. That's why I think we are in this difficult position of having to find a suitable replacement. So we already use, so for example, in Leicester, when we assess an application, we have lots of information. We have the teacher's predictions, the student's personal statement, their achievements within school, outside school, and then in this case we have the mock result. So I think we should just trust one measure. I think having a basket of measures is the right approach because there are lots of other factors that determine who is going to be successful at a university education.
But is there not a contradiction in what you're saying to me? Because you're saying that you take a combination of the mock results and you contact the school and you talk to the teachers, right? But I would have thought that actually if teachers are predicting grades the way they should, they would be using the mock results and their assessment of a student in order to come up with a prediction. So I'm wondering if you actually are going full circle. Do you see what I mean? If a teacher's predicting grades properly, that assessment will be made on mock results, their experience of that child, any exams the child's done beforehand. So why does the teacher prediction not tell the full story?
So the problem is, I think, the method that is used by the government is a statistical method that does a model across the cohort of students. Whereas the normal assessment that we are looking at in a mock assessment is an individual assessment. So what we are trying to do is to use the individual assessment. In some schools, they will use the mock as the prediction. In some schools, the mock happens after the prediction. So for us, the mock, in some cases, it will reinforce the teacher's prediction. In some cases, it will add additional information that was not available when we assessed the application, when the application was made. So it can, in some cases, reinforce the teacher's prediction. In some cases, it provides a different context to the performance of the student. So I don't think it's a circular argument.
Are you worried about the mental health impact on this year's students across the UK?
Very much so. And that is one of the reasons we announced this measure early on. it was a risky measure because, as you correctly said, there are a number of ways people will approach this. But we talked to the teachers. We had teacher advisory groups, teachers from different types of schools, grammar schools, academies. We asked them how they feel about this approach. They felt this will reassure the students. This is a good way to support their mental health and also gives them assurance that they can make some plans as to what they can do about their next few months, about their future career plans. So that's what we did, and I think absolutely I agree with you. This is a very difficult time for our school leavers. They have not been able to carry on with their education since March, and now having to deal with the outcome of the result. And they feel, which is in some cases is not fair, they sometimes feel it's not been transparent. And in the recent case, they feel it has not been very timely. And these are the three things that we try to address in the way we approach this.
You know, I shudder to think, if this isn't sorted quickly, what could happen in terms of the mental health for some of our young people. You know, that age group, and you will know this better than I, your career is with young people, but it can be a volatile time, Professor, in someone's life. And sometimes an 18, 19-year-old does not have the hinterland of experience to realise that there are other options, and no matter what happens in life, things tend to be okay. And it's a volatile, sometimes dangerous time in our lives when we're that age, and we've got to be mindful of that.
Absolutely. And I think in normal circumstances it's a very volatile and difficult time. But right now, the students who feel they have not got what they deserved feel even harshly treated by the system. And I think we, as a community, both within the university and a society, we need to see how we can support them. And I think that is the number one priority for all of us in the university.
Final question. Do you have confidence in Ofqual?
I don't know. Clearly, I think they have done what they could with the information they have, and they've tried to ensure the standards are maintained. But I think any normal person would say, if you're coming up with guidelines 36 hours before the results are released, and then appeal information is released 2 days after the results are released, people will naturally wonder why these things haven't been thought through beforehand. But I'm reasonably confident that with time they will come up with the answers, but I'm not sufficiently knowledgeable to tell you whether I have the full confidence or not.
I do want to ask you one last question. Do you feel that what they're doing here is trying to protect the integrity of the system rather than protect this year's students?
I think if you
what's
talk
happening here?
Yeah. I think if you talk to individual students, and you have been in the program, and I've been talking to students who have been contacting the university, I think that has been the fundamental issue, and that is what we are all grappling with. In the past, every individual student was able to give their best performance and feel they were judged appropriately, and they got the grades they deserve. If not, they were able to appeal. But the way the grades are calculated this time, it somehow feels the individual has been lost in the system. And I think that's why we need to do whatever we can between now and the university starting, or to give them another opportunity to start the university the following year, to put that right. Because I think some students feel they have lost out in the process.
Lovely to talk to you tonight. Thank you very much indeed, Professor.
Thank you.
Nishan Kanagaraji, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Leicester. We'll pause there. We'll get the news. It's just gone 11:30.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
With the 5 Live News, I'm Maz Faruqi. The exams regulator in England has said it will consider the results of unofficial tests set by teachers as part of appeals against GCSE and A-level grades. Ofqual has set out the grounds on which schools can challenge pupils' grades based on their mock results after 40% of teachers' A-level predictions were lowered by a moderating process. It said non-exam assessment marks may also be considered in some cases. A further 3 people have died in the UK with coronavirus. The total number of people to die within 28 days of testing positive for COVID-19 now stands at 41,361. South Africa is lifting bans on the sale of alcohol and tobacco imposed to try to stop the spread of coronavirus. The country has recorded more than half of Africa's infections, with more than 11,000 deaths. And members of the royal family have taken part in commemorations marking 75 years since Japan's surrender ended the Second World War. A message from the Queen thanked those who fought so valiantly. In sport, Pep Guardiola says he won't make excuses after Manchester City were knocked out by Lyon in their Champions League quarter-final. Guardiola's side had been the heavy favourites in the competition, but they were beaten 3-1. He added that he doesn't want to dwell on the circumstances surrounding Lyon's second goal when a VAR check on a possible foul on Aymeric Laporte went against City.
I don't want to talk about now what it is. The referee decide, the VAR decide. This kind of circumstances is where it is. So the distance is sometimes the chances we miss, and after we concede a goal. So maybe one day we're going to break this part of the quarterfinals. We are not able to do it. I'm not able with these incredible guys to do it. We're going to try in the future.
Hibs dropped points for the first time this season with a 0-0 draw with Motherwell. One is still enough, though, to move them clear at the top of the Scottish Premiership. And Watford have confirmed the appointment of Vladimir Ivic as their new head coach on a one-year deal. Karen Wilson has fought back to close the gap on Ronnie O'Sullivan at Snooker's World Championship final. At one stage, he was 8-2 down to the five-time world champion, but he will start Sunday just 3 frames back after the evening session ended 10-7 to O'Sullivan. A draw between England and Pakistan's men looks the most likely result now in the second test after play was abandoned on day 3 without a single ball being bowled. Poor light was to blame for most of the day. There was a lighter period after lunch, but the umpires said play couldn't resume then because of a wet outfield. Poor weather is forecast for the final 2 days. The ECB, meanwhile, is in talks with West Indies over a potential women's series in September as a replacement for the one scheduled in against South Africa. Coronavirus. Lewis Hamilton says his future at Mercedes won't be influenced by that of team principal Toto Wolff. His comments come after he secured a 4th pole of the season ahead of Sunday's Spanish Grand Prix. Wolff has overseen Mercedes' unprecedented run of 6 straight drivers and constructors' championships, but has hinted he may leave at the end of the year.
That's not determining whether or not I stay. I think everyone has to do what's best for them and what's best for their career and happiness at the end of the day. But I hope he stays. It's fun working with him and it's fun negotiating with him. Truly grateful to Toto, so I'll be supportive in whatever he decides to do.
Last year's semi-finalist and the world number 8, Belinda Bencic, has become the latest high-profile player to withdraw from the US Open, which starts at the end of the month. In their first game since Rugby Union's Premiership return, leaders Exeter eased to a 26-13 win over Leicester Tigers. Elsewhere, Bristol beat Saracen, and there were also wins for Gloucester and Bath. And in Super League, a late drop goal saw Warrington beat Huddersfield 19-18, while Catalan thrashed Wakefield 58-0. And that's the latest from BBC Sport.
BBC Sounds. Grab an ice lolly, fill up the paddling pool and turn up the music. It's time to celebrate summer with the Sunny Day Dance Mix. Back-to-back upbeat tunes to ease you into the night or brighten up your day, whatever the weather. The Sunny Day Dance Mix. Listen on the BBC Sounds app.
First for news and the best live sport. This is BBC 5 Live with Stephen Nolan.
Well, there seems to be some movement from Ofcall tonight. I'm trying to get my head around this, to be honest. I'm just looking at a statement here now, and it reads as follows. It says, and this is from Ofcall, and it says, earlier today, we published information about mock exam results in appeals. This policy is being reviewed by the Ofcall board, and further information will be published in due course. So what does that mean? They're now reviewing what they've suspended. It looks like they've suspended their policies on appeals. What on earth is going on? So this is the exam regulator for England. I'm reading this, by the way, for the first time as you're listening to me read this out loud. So help me get my head around this. And if I can read the Press Association copy from Gavin Corton here, who's the PA's Whitehall editor. The exams regulator for England has dramatically suspended its criteria for students hoping to challenge their A-level grades on the basis of the results in mock exams. In a statement, Ofqual have now said that their policy is, quote, being reviewed by its board, and that further information will be released in due course. No reason for the decision has been released. So this is just hours after Ofqual published its criteria for mock exam results to be considered as the basis of an appeal. You now have teachers and students discussing the fact that they can use mock exam results as the basis of their appeal, and now suddenly tonight that is being ripped away from students. We don't know if it's a permanent withdrawal. It's under review. And what I would be asking Ofqual and this government tonight, what impact do they think this is having on the mental health of our students throughout this country? Is there any better way of creating confusion in a young person's mind than what you're currently doing? To repeat again, here's the statement just coming into us here at 5 Live. An Ofqual spokesperson has said, earlier today we published information about mock exam results in appeals. This policy is being reviewed by the Ofqual board, and further information will be published in due course. So let me dig into that a second and tell you what my first reading of that is. They have published a statement, published a policy about mock exams, and the board haven't okayed it. They're now reviewing it. How on earth do they put out a policy today and then the board needing to review it? What is going on in that organisation? And if you're a student tonight or a parent and you want to react to this breaking story, here's the number: 08085 909 693. And obviously we will be doing our very, very best to get our heads around this for you and try to get some political reaction to this tonight. I'm sure there will be tomorrow morning on all of the news programmes, but a further twist in this story this evening. 08085 909 693. We'll come back to that story. Now, the leading City of London firm Schroders has joined the ranks of big financial companies, changing the way it works. More of the asset management company staff will be working flexibly from now on. They're not alone. The high street banks have led the way on working from home. HSBC has said that just a fifth of its 10,000 London staff will be back at their desks in September. TSB is in consultation with its workforce about a return to the office as well. But how do you manage the decision to shut the office and work remotely? How many people will end up working from home permanently? How many companies will decide they do not need an office anymore? Well, Richard Mischke is founder of the Marketing Optimist. It's a Leeds-based digital marketing agency. Richard's team has been working from home since just before the lockdown started. Hello, Richard.
Good evening.
Hi. How's it been then? How's it been different?
It's been interesting because, like you said, we started working from home a week before lockdown because I wanted to trial it because I wasn't sure what was going to happen with coronavirus. But then the lockdown hit, and so we just continued to work from home. And I think, like a lot of people, a lot of business, we were in shock initially, and I think a lot of the country went into that kind of thing. But as it's gone on, I've realised that actually we can work really well all working remotely. If you asked me this 6 months ago, I was very adamant that and those kind of, I call them water colour moments, are really difficult, obviously, when you're remote. We do video conferencing and normal communications, but everything has to be kind of booked in. So that kind of little incident where you might be sat next to your team and the colleagues and speak somebody's body language or something exercise or whatever else. Where as an owner, I can reach out to somebody and kind of say, are you okay? Is there anything I can help you with? Those areas have now gone, and people have to almost make like a formal appointment, it feels, to have either a video call or a phone call. So the areas of spontaneity and the areas where you would normally come up with like ideas which just come from a kind of casual remark or something that's happened in another part of the office, that's really difficult when you're working remotely. So that's been one of the downsides. And obviously building a team culture is a lot more difficult when you're all remote.
Richard, I'm going to ask you to stay there for me just 1 second. I want to break away to this story that's now emerging this evening, that Ofqual has now suspended its policy on A-level mock exam appeals. Our political correspondent Jonathan Blake joining us tonight. Well, Jonathan, this is extraordinary.
Yeah, we were talking, around an hour or so ago, and I was running through the guidance that Ofqual published this afternoon, which gave details of how students who were not happy with the A-level results they'd been allocated could appeal on the basis of their mock grades if they were higher, and all the criteria that would be taken into consideration there. There was a fair bit of response to that, some criticism from Labour saying that it treated some students unfairly because there was an anomaly which attracted particular criticism, that if students had a predicted grade from their teachers which was lower than their mock result, that would take priority and that will be the grade that they would get. And we now have a situation whereby just in the last half an hour or so, Ofqual have removed that guidance from their website and posted a very brief statement saying that earlier today we published information about mock exam results and appeals. This policy is being reviewed by the Ofqual board, it says, and further information will be published in due course. The Department for Education know nothing about this. There is no word from anyone at Ofqual, despite repeated attempts on our behalf to get hold of them, and it's seemingly come out of the blue, and of course is going to lead to more criticism that this is a confusing and somewhat chaotic process.
I think an obvious question, Jonathan, is how much confidence will the public, students, teachers have in an examination body, Ofqual, who in the middle of intense scrutiny already before today publish a policy on appeal and then have to withdraw it hours later because the board hadn't reviewed it?
Well, it doesn't look good, frankly, from anyone's perspective, I think, and it strikes me as very odd. They were, to some extent, bounced into this, Ofqual were, by the government when they announced, the Secretary of State for Education in England, Gavin Williams, announced earlier this week that mock exam grades could be considered as grounds for an appeal by a student who'd received A-level results that they weren't happy with. That was, if you remember, just a day before results day itself. There were a lot of questions about how that was going to work. The government said, well, Ofcom will deal with that. They'll put some guidance out in the next few days. So people have been waiting for this. It arrived this afternoon without warning. People were going through the detail and digesting it, and now it's been pulled. And as you suggest, the statement, brief as it is, might lead people to believe that the guidance had not been considered by the Ofqual board, or maybe they've decided to look again at it given the reaction and given the criticism. But I have to say, those I was talking to earlier on in government and beyond were, from the Department of Education's point of view, relaxed about that guidance. They felt that those students who had a higher predicted grade, had a lower predicted grade than their mock result would be very few in number, and that those students would only represent a small number and a minority of those who did appeal. So even in the face of Labour's criticism that triple lock the government talked about was unravelling, was standing by the process and the system as a whole. That said, they were pointing out that this was a decision taken by Ofqual and not by the government and not by the Department for Education.
There's a time issue, Jonathan, with this too, isn't there? Because universities, it's just striking me that universities have said that they need the appeals process sorted by the 7th of September. That's the deadline for students to meet academic offer conditions. And here we have another pause, another delay, more confusion.
Yeah, it's 3 weeks away, and that is not much time at all for what is quite a tricky and bureaucratic process to go through, and it has to be done by schools on behalf of individual students. There's no way for individual students to appeal against their results directly. It all has to be done through the school. So school teachers, head teachers are going to be looking at this and thinking, well, how can they get everything done within that time frame available? There's huge pressure, of course, on students and universities who need to fill their places and have given offers and are in many cases, holding those offers open for people who are trying to appeal their results to see if their grades can be adjusted back up so that they can meet the offer they have from university.
Погнали дальше.
And having this guidance put out there and then removed within a few hours doesn't help, frankly.
Jonathan, thank you very much indeed. 08085 909 693 if you want to react to this breaking story this evening. We were talking to Professor Nishan Kanakaraja, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Leicester, and a matter of minutes ago, Nishan, we were talking about your university being able to rely on mock results and how that's the system of appeal that Ofqual had ratified, and they've suspended it. Like, what is your reaction to this as someone that's been in education in this country for many years?
It is very unfortunate, because we were talking about how its impact on the mental health of our young people, and this is not going to help. And they were hoping there would be some information given on how the appeal process works, and they were given some information which was confusing in some respects, that was published a couple of hours ago. And then 2 hours later to say there's going to be further delay is not going to reassure these students. And I think this is why I feel part of the reason we took the approach is the challenges of Ofqual implementing this appeal process. Because as we discussed, it is very difficult to find a consistent mechanism for assessing students. So I'm not surprised by the decision they have taken, but I am concerned the delay and the anxiety and the impact on the younger people.
But I was asking if you have confidence in this body, Professor. I was asking that a matter of moments ago. What type of competent organisation, knowing that students were already distressed, issues a policy to them to try to reassure them and then rips that away a matter of hours later? Who are these people? How competent are they? How about reviewing their performance? How about grading them? And are they fit for purpose?
It is difficult to answer that because we don't know exactly how the various bodies were involved in that decision making, and it's we need to wait and see what Ofqual will release in terms of how the decision was made and what the board's considerations were. But clearly, making these decisions like this doesn't inspire confidence, not just in Ofqual, but the whole assessment regime and how the government and various bodies are handling this situation.
How does this affect what you'll be doing within your university?
No, I think in fact it kind of indicates the position that we took by saying we will take the mock result and talk to the schools and find our own approach to assess who is suitable to come. So I feel that we have a process that has worked and we can continue, and I suspect the net result of these other universities might follow what we have just done.
Okay, Nishan, thank you very much, sir. Thank you. If you are just joining us here on 5 Live this evening, some dramatic news, and it is that the examination body for England, Ofqual, within hours of announcing a policy that mock exams could be used in the appeals process, have now suspended it, saying that the Ofqual board needs to review it. And as I was saying to Professor Nishan Kanagaraji tonight. He's the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Leicester. You know, do we really feel that... Well, let me ask you the question, if you're listening tonight, if you're a student. Do you know where you're at? Do you feel reassured? Do you know what's going on? Do you know how you can appeal this? 08085 909 693 is the number to call. It's 6 minutes now to midnight.
Since my beauty has gone, look at me longingly, like I'm the belle of the ball.
That's Hannah White and Nordic Connections with Pay Me a Compliment. Hannah was performing at the Sound Lounge in London tonight as more lockdown restrictions in England were eased. And she's with me now. Hello, Hannah.
Hello there, how are you?
Hello, I'm okay, thank you. And we can also speak to the music journalist and Sound Lounge patron Paul Sexton, who's in the audience tonight. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Stephen.
Hello there. Well, we're dealing with a lot of news tonight, but if we look at this, Hannah, this is the lockdown restrictions in England being eased. How did it feel doing this gig tonight?
Well, yeah, it was a huge relief, and it was just wonderful because it was in a room playing music. You know, I've been feeling bereft throughout this whole lockdown. It's felt like a real loss. It's felt really sad, and you know, the anxiety of, like, you know, my livelihood. Tonight it's just felt lovely, but also it has felt a little bit sad as well because, you know, there's definitely an air of celebration and people in the room really wanted to. But it's, you know, the last time I played, there were 5 times as many people, and it's, you know, that feels a bit, it's a bit strange. It's different. It's the start of something, hopefully.
Yeah, it's different, and it's not as good, quite truthfully, right?
No, it's not as good. You have to, you know, when people are cheering, you have to kind of tone it down. If people are getting up to dance, you have to remind them, actually, don't do that. So, you know, it's not as relaxed and it's not the experience of letting go and allowing that music experience to take over. You can't really. You've got something else always on your mind.
Paul, what was it like for you?
Well, just as a music fan, Stephen, I would say it was kind of life-affirming, actually, because it reminded you of all of the things that you loved about live music before, and just how much we've all missed it. You know, we've been doing, actually, as a Sound Lounge patron, I've been curating a series of live stream events for the guys over the last, I suppose, 3 months probably, and they've been lovely, and the reaction's been fantastic, and you know, we've been doing what we can, but you cannot replace the live experience. And just sitting watching Hannah and her husband, guitarist Kieran Marshall, playing tonight, you just forget how visceral this is. You know, it's a physical experience, and it's a two-way thing too. You know, they're performing for us, and we're, you know, the audience are actually giving something back to them that you can't get from a screen or any other way. You know, so it was reduced circumstances. I guess that's fair to say, but still just a lovely evening, really.
Do you think the live music industry has a chance of recovering back to anything like it was, Paul?
Well, it's going to be a slow process. There's no doubt about that. You know, the figures are not, you know, not encouraging really, because if you take this evening, for example, I think we were one of 16 events that took place across the whole of the UK tonight. So there's a lot of venues that just have no chance of opening because, you know, just from a physical point of view, the dimensions of their buildings won't allow them enough people in the room to have any hope of making any money or you know, making it a viable event. The Sound Lounge is a little bit luckier in that respect because you know, at least we've been able to do it at, I suppose, about 20 to 25% capacity.
I think viability is a key word, Hannah. How have performers been surviving? Because in the gig industry, of course, many performers are living week to week. It's a volatile business at the best of times.
It is.
How have they been paying the wage? How have they been paying the bills?
I mean, quite honestly, I think it's been desperate, and I think the people who I know in my peer group have been looking for other means of making money, and just taking on jobs, trying to teach. Some of them, myself included, have been doing live streams and asking for, I had tours cancelled, so I started doing live streams and asking, people who were logging on to see the performances, anyone who was going to buy a gig, ticket, asking them to kind of pay through PayPal. So that kind of kept us going for a few months. The Musicians Union have done a small grant, and Help Musicians as another organisation have done a small grant, and those things have been useful, but they're nowhere near the kind of salary, that you need to sustain yourself. We've all had our livelihoods just taken away, and we've all fallen through the cracks, really, for government support. So it's been desperate. We're all surviving.
Anna, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Paul, all the very best. Thank you. The breaking news this evening, and we're trying to get detail around it, the examination body Ofqual, hours after announcing a policy telling students they could use their mock exam results as part of their appeal process, have taken that away. They've suspended it. We're trying to understand what's going on, and we're straight back after the midnight news.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at midnight, this is Adam Coulson. Just hours after the exams regulator for England gave more details of how A-level pupils can appeal against their grades based on their mock results, Ofqual has now suspended its advice and said the policy was being reviewed. It said further information will be released in due course. Thousands of grades were marked down after a moderation process was used in place of exams. These students in Liverpool want the government to do a U-turn.
We organised this protest today because it's simply not fair. Students across the country have been let down by the system.
There is no idea what is going on about the appeal process, and that is my future hanging in the balance.
The Prince of Wales has led commemorations to mark the 75th anniversary of VJ Day, when Japan's surrender ended the Second World War. Prince Charles joined veterans and military personnel for a service at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire. Travellers returning to the UK from France have expressed frustration at having to quarantine for 2 weeks after narrowly missing the deadline. From 4 o'clock this morning, travellers from France, the Netherlands and 4 other countries were required to isolate. This traveller arrived back into Gatwick this morning.
We were 5 hours too late for the quarantine, so now we all have to quarantine. My husband's losing money for 2 weeks. It's ridiculous.
Liquidation plans are being drawn up for the department store chain Debenhams in case other options for saving it fail. The company insists it's trading strongly and that the proposals are being looked at only as a last resort. Manchester City have been knocked out of the Champions League. They were beaten 3-1 by Lyon in their quarter-final in Lisbon. Lyon will face Bayern Munich in the semis. John Murray reports.
It was a night to forget for coach Pep Guardiola as his Manchester City side once again fell short in the Champions League. He changed his system to 3 central defenders, but City were 1-0 down at half-time. Maxwell Cornet the scorer. Kevin De Bruyne's equaliser looked to have turned it. Instead, stage with 2 goals. There were questions over offside and a possible foul for his first, but VAR said it was good. And after an extraordinary open goal miss from Raheem Sterling that could have made it 2-2, at the other end, goalkeeper Ederson fumbled Aouar's shot and Dembele finished it and finished off City.
An endurance swimmer is attempting to cross the channel between England and France for the 35th time. If she's successful, Chloe McArdle, who's from Australia, will pass the men's record of 34 crossings. She's hoping to avoid new coronavirus quarantine regulations by standing on French soil for only a few minutes before swimming back out to her support boat for the return journey. And the weather forecast, scattered showers with the chance of thunderstorms will continue across some southern parts of England and Wales. Elsewhere, it'll be largely dry, but with a lot of low cloud and mist. BBC News, it's 3 minutes past midnight.
And he'll come onto the start-finish straight then. Here he goes. Braking heavily for the right-hander. Chucks it in. Left-hander, right-hander. Out of club. Onto the start-finish straight. And it's Max Verstappen, the unlikely winner of Formula One's 70th anniversary Grand Prix in the Red Bull. What a drive. What a race. Lewis Hamilton brings it in second in the Mercedes with his teammate Valtteri Bottas in the sister Mercedes coming home third.
Next, the Spanish Grand Prix. Race commentary from 1 p.m. on Sunday.
F1 on 5 Live. Stephen Nolan on BBC Radio 5 Live.
Well, we've just heard of a major climb down by Ofqual in the last half hour. More on this breaking news in a moment. And we've continued to hear stories of students' lives turned upside down by the chaos around exam grading. It's not just A-levels, but also BTEC grades, which have caused confusion and dismay. Ellie is one of those, still waiting for her results.
There's no clear explanation, there's no apology, and there's no everybody else get their results. You know, we feel quite forgotten.
Amy is a performing arts student. She received lower grades than predicted due to the algorithm, but did at least manage to get into university. She thinks she's one of the lucky ones.
I was lucky. I got downgraded by two grades, but I just can't even imagine what it could be like for other people. But obviously it's still frustrating for me because it's work that I've put in and I've worked so hard to get that grade, and it's something that means a lot to me and I still haven't got it. So yeah, just very, very annoying.
It's very frustrating for students and frustrating for their teachers too.
The ones that were cancelled, all of my students have been given a pass, which is the lowest possible grade, even though the vast majority of them had nothing but distinctions and merits for all of the other units. So Pearson have assumed that they would have done worse in those two final units than they had at any other point during the 2 years, and that's what pulled their grades down. And it just makes no sense. It's completely bewildering.
Coming up, after the outcry around A-level results, could GCSE results this week be marred in a similar controversy? A professor of statistics has told this programme the algorithm could once again be found wanting.
There's actually a big problem with what they've done. Our view is that the testing methodology is rather flawed as well, and it's giving, in our view, over-optimistic results because they're using information to test it which just doesn't exist at the moment.
That story is among the headlines you'll be waking up to in your Sunday morning newspapers. The Observer, controversial algorithm set to 97% of results. 4.6 million, says the Observer, will not reflect teachers' grades. The Sunday Express, children must come first. The Education Secretary makes passionate back-to-school plea as he defends grades. The Sunday Mirror, sack our biggest failure. Labour and the Lib Dems say school minister must go. The Sunday Telegraph, Hancock axes failing public health body. Public Health England is to be scrapped this week and replaced by the German-style Pandemic Response Agency, according to the Telegraph. The Mail on Sunday, pretty in racist French storm. Sunday People, Boris's 3-year slump. Country won't recover from recession until 2023. And The Independent on Sunday, wave of evictions looms as tenants lose protection. There is so much to talk about tonight. We need you to be picking up the phone. Here's how to get in touch.
This is BBC 5 Live. Call free 08085 909 693. Text 85058. Text will be charged at your standard message rate. Plus, see our privacy notice. bbc.co.uk/5 Live.
Stephen Nolan on BBC Radio 5 Live.
Well, while we have been on air this evening, Ofqual's guidance to students has changed again. Less than an hour ago, I was talking to a university professor as to how, and I was quoting Ofqual policy, and I was saying how students can use mock exams as part of their appeals process. Within the last few minutes, Ofqual have released a statement, and they have now pulled that. They have said that the policy is suspended because their board is reviewing it. How on earth can Ofqual publish a policy so vital to student stability and mental health stability and then pull it? They've said further information will be released in due course. Thousands of grades were marked down after a moderation process was used in place of exams. Our political correspondent, Jonathan Blake, has been bringing me the latest on this Ofqual announcement.
we were talking, around an hour or so ago, and I was running through the guidance that Ofqual published this afternoon, which gave details of how students who were not happy with the A-level results they've been allocated could appeal on the basis of their mock grades if they were higher, and all the criteria that would be taken into consideration there. There was a fair bit of response to that, some criticism from Labour saying that it treated some students unfairly because there was an anomaly which attracted particular criticism, that if students had a predicted grade from their teachers which was lower than their mock result, that would take priority and that would be the grade they would get. And we now have a situation whereby just in the last half an hour or so, Ofqual have removed that guidance from their website and posted a very brief statement saying that earlier today we published information about mock exam results and appeals. This policy is being reviewed by the Ofqual board, it says, and further information will be published in due course. The Department for Education know nothing about this. There is no word from anyone at Ofqual, despite repeated attempts on our behalf to get hold of them, and it's seemingly come out of the blue, and of course is going to lead to more criticism that this is a confusing and somewhat chaotic process.
I think an obvious question, Jonathan, is how much confidence will the public, students, teachers have in an examination body, Ofqual, who in the middle of intense scrutiny already before today publish a policy on appeal and then have to withdraw it hours later because the board hadn't reviewed it?
Well, it doesn't look good, frankly, from anyone's perspective, I think, and it strikes me as very odd. They were, to some extent, bounced into this, Ofqual were, by the government when they announced, the Secretary of State for Education in England, Gavin Williams, announced earlier this week that mock exam grades could be considered as grounds for an appeal by a student who'd received A-level results that they weren't happy with. That was, if you remember, just a day before results day itself. There were a lot of questions about how that was going to work. The government said, well, Ofcom will deal with that. They'll put some guidance out in the next few days. So people have been waiting for this. It arrived this afternoon without warning. People were going through the detail and digesting it, and now it's been pulled. And as you suggest, the statement, brief as it is, might lead people to believe that the guidance had not been considered by the Ofqual board, or maybe they've decided to look again at it given the reaction and given the criticism. But I have to say, those I was talking to earlier on in government and beyond were, from the Department of Education's point of view, relaxed about that guidance. They felt that those students who had a higher predicted grade, had a lower predicted grade than their mock result would be very few in number, and that those students would only represent a small number and a minority of those who did appeal. So even in the face of Labour's criticism that triple lock the government talked about was unravelling, we're standing by the process and the system as a whole. That said, they were pointing out that this was a decision taken by Ofqual and not by the government and not by the Department for Education.
There's a time issue, Jonathan, with this too, isn't there? Because universities, it's just striking me that universities have said that they need the appeals process sorted by the 7th of September. That's the deadline for students to meet academic offer conditions. And here we have another pause, another delay, more confusion.
Yeah, it's 3 weeks away, and that is not much time at all for what is quite a tricky and bureaucratic process to go through, and it has to be done by schools on behalf of individual students. There's no way for individual students to appeal against their results directly. It all has to be done through the school. So school teachers, head teachers are going to be looking at this and thinking, well, how can they get everything done within that time frame available? There's huge pressure, of course, on students and universities who need to fill their places and have given offers and are in some cases, in many cases, holding those offers open for people who are trying to appeal their results to see if their grades can be adjusted back up so that they can meet the offer they have from university and get that place. So a lot of things have to fall into place, and a lot of things are in limbo here. And there is, time is of the essence. There is a pressing schedule for students to appeal against their results and try to get them adjusted back up. And having this guidance put out there and then removed within a few hours doesn't help, frankly.
That's our political core, Jonathan Blake, 08085 909 693. Let's talk to more students tonight. Martha. Well, Martha, good evening again.
Hello.
So I was talking to you, can you believe this? I was talking to you earlier on tonight. You are a student, you're in the middle of this. We were talking about how people your age could rely on their mock exam results as part of their appeals process, and within hours of Ofqual handing that out to students as an olive branch, they've taken it away or suspended it. What's your reaction?
I know, I just can't believe like the absolute flip-flopping on this issue. I mean, the fact that we were already so worried, but we thought this was one of the very few things that we could rely upon. You had your mock results to fall back on, and then for them to turn around and say that that's not the case. I mean, I just can't imagine the pressure on teachers right now, the pressure this is putting on students. It's amazing to me that they could change their mind on this issue.
They've said in a statement that their board is now reviewing the policy. The obvious follow-up question to that is how on earth did the board not fully review the policy before they published it?
Well, of course, I just can't believe that you would... I mean, that an awarding body would put up this very clear statement and then turn around and say that their board hadn't... I can't understand how that can possibly be so irresponsible. Putting further pressure on both teachers and students who are trying to work out what they actually do now, how to move forward.
We've been talking all night about the mental health impact on students. What do you think this U-turn now, this further twist by Ofqual, what added pressure?
I think this will add enormous pressure. I mean, I think an outcry from students already who feel that they've been unfairly downgraded, who don't feel that the grades that they have been given are a representation of their academic ability. And then for Ofqual to turn around and say that they haven't properly reviewed their policies, I just don't understand how they can believe that students or teachers will have any faith in them as an awarding body now when they turn around and say that they don't fully review the policy that they're giving out before they published them. It's just insane to me.
Do you have confidence in Ofqual?
At the moment, no. I would say that I probably did before this whole process began, but the way it flip-flopped on these issues, I just can't say that I have faith in them as an awarding body. I hope that they pull together and that they apologise for the pressure that they put on students. But at the moment, I would say that I don't have any faith, no.
Martha, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Brandon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll try to get our heads around this. Brandon, a teacher in the northwest of London. Hello, Brandon.
Hi, Stephen.
What's going on, Brandon?
So, well, I read this policy earlier, and the only thing I can imagine is what they're going to change is that it said that students' scripts didn't need to be retained. And from a point of, looking at a whole country's worth of results, how fair that would be, because, some schools may say they have results when they don't, and don't have those scripts. Now, with the whole system as it's happened, I don't think that it's actually a bad system. I think some students have been unfairly treated, and I really think what should be spoken about is the universities who have rejected students when they've got one grade less. I know a few students in my school who needed to get 3 A's and a B, ended up with 3 A stars and a C, and were rejected from the university. Those are the problems. With this system, there are going to be people who are hard done by. And that is just unfortunately how it's going to be. But the universities could have dealt with this better. and next week is going to be 10 times worse with GCSE. And in Scotland...
Why do you say that?
Because next week there's more students, there's more grades, there's more subjects. It is going to be a disaster next week, but the stakes are not as high. With Scotland, with doing teacher predictions, that's fine, but it's a fact that teachers over-predict. So when those students in 2 years' time come to do their A-levels in courses that really they're not capable of doing, they're going to look back on this and think that those teacher predictions set them up to fail. That is a fact. Teachers over-predict. That's not because they just want the best for their students. It's very difficult giving a student a centre assessed grade. That's what we had to do a couple of months ago. Could you imagine predicting a student a D grade? How can a teacher do that? That is so difficult to do.
Well, your comments are not consistent with at least some of the teachers who I've spoken to, Brandon, who have said trust them, and who have said that actually the predictions that they've done this year were different than other years, and that this year they sat down and they looked at hard data, they looked at mock exam results, they looked at the performance of the child over many years in their school, and their group of teachers were able to sit down and make an assessment of that child, were able to look at mitigating factors that child might have endured in their life. All of these type of things an algorithm doesn't know about. Some of those teachers gave predictions that the children would not have wanted, and that they stand over their integrity, that they have predicted accurate grades.
They may well have. Did you see the data in Scotland? The data in Scotland from teachers showed a massive increase in results. That's not saying that the individual teachers aren't doing their best, but it's a fact. They have predicted results, and the results Scotland students have got are way higher than previous years.
So then we get into really interesting territory, Brandon, because you're right, the data in Scotland did show that, and I have seen some of the modelling for other nations in the UK, and it shows actually of how teachers are often overly optimistic at grade C level in particular, actually, and the difference between grade C and grade D. And you can nearly see why, even if we look at it as lay people, that if you've got a teacher and they're looking at a student that may be grade C, maybe grade D, well, they're probably going to give that kid the benefit of the doubt and assign them a grade C as a predicted grade. But the graphs around this, you're absolutely right, they show that teachers are often overly optimistic compared to the hard results that a child then gets when they sit an exam. But here's where we're in really interesting territory then, Brandon. What would you rather have this year of the pandemic? Would you rather have grade inflation, in other words, some students getting better grades than they otherwise would have before this pandemic? Or would you rather have an individual child, a real human being with individual skills, and their grade is assigned to them based on strangers who happen to have gone to their school the year before and the year before that, and how those strangers who they've never met performed in an exam? Because that's what's helping to dictate an individual child's exam this year. The past performance of their school, people they've never met, who have nothing to do with their lives, and that is what is helping to dictate their grade. Now, which would you rather have?
What I would rather have is I would rather students be allowed to take those exams again, which they're allowed to, but the universities, certainly the universities, have a moral duty to accept those students who are 1 grade, 2 grades, and to be honest, most of them where they might be a few grades off. If they were happy to give them the offer in the first place, they have a duty. Now, students are going to be hard done by here, and those cases where they're 1 grade off, the universities should be ashamed of themselves for not offering those places. Okay. They have the duty, and there should be more pressure on them to be doing that than what there is at the moment. Now, the algorithm was always going to cause problems because you can never have a system that works for everyone. The alternative to having a teacher prediction and everyone getting a teacher prediction is that next year's students, who there's been very little change in their qualifications, most of the qualifications, what they've got to learn is pretty much the same for most subjects, certainly at A level. They are going to be judged against these students this year, who, if they had teacher predictions, would have overinflated grades.
But I'm sorry, these students this year, how is it their grade that they're being given? Their grade that they're being given is based upon the previous performance of the school, children who they don't know, who have nothing to do with their lives. Brandon?
Well, but one part of it is, but if those students are really upset by it, they do have options. They can retake it. They can
Well, or they can appeal, and now the appeal system tonight is in a mess, where the policy 2 hours ago has now been suspended. Brandon, thank you. I want to move on to the other students, if you don't mind. Joshua. Hello, Joshua.
Hi.
How do you feel about this, Joshua?
Not great. It's a lot of uncertainty, and I think, posting information and deleting it a few hours later is only adding to that.
Just remind us about your situation, Joshua.
Before I was moderated, my grades were A star, A, B, and after moderation it's A, B, B. So one of my A stars was moderated to an A, and one of my A's was moderated to a B. And I'd been rejected from Manchester for maths, and I missed my offer by 1, so they wanted A, B, and obviously I missed it by 1, and they don't care about the other A, because it's an AS level, so that's my situation.
And were you going to appeal?
I plan on appealing. Yeah, I'm appealing for both those grades, because I have the marks for it as well.
But now, of course, Ofqual have withdrawn what they promised you a couple of hours ago. The basis on which you can appeal with regards to your mocks.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't understand what's going on. There's no information at all. And they just seem to be adding more barriers as well. Like, they're saying things now like if you did a mock and your predicted grade by your teacher was lower than your mock, you get the predicted grade now, which is not something they specified earlier. Luckily for me, my mocks were the grades that my teachers predicted, so I should hopefully get those grades. But it's just so much uncertainty at the moment.
What's the impact on your mental health, Joshua?
Really not good. I've spent most of the day on Twitter, refreshing, trying to see if there's any information from Ofqual, because I really don't know what's going on. And the other thing is will the appeals be done by the 7th of September? Because that's Manchester only honouring my placement until the 7th of September. So, will it be done by then? It doesn't seem like it will be. So I just feel really up in the air. I don't know what's going on. It's really not helpful at all.
Well, listen, thank you very much indeed for talking to me tonight, Joshua. I wish you the best for the future, mate. Isabel next. Hello, Isabel.
Hello.
Hi. So, Ofqual now suspending the policy they only announced. Isabel.
I'm just staggered as to how, a large, respected exam board or, exam regulator have been allowed to roll out a policy that they haven't even checked long enough to make sure that they don't have to roll it back within 3 hours. They've had since March.
I guess if I'm trying to be fair as possible to them, I would remind you that we're in the middle of a pandemic and they're having to make extraordinary decisions at fast pace.
Yes, but when exam results were cancelled in March, it was very obvious that since schools were unable to open because of the pandemic, and my mum is a nurse, so I fully appreciate that, schools were unable to remain open through that. But they've had exams were cancelled in March. The next deadline for Ofqual and the Education Secretary was exam results day for A-levels. And on that results day, it was obvious that they were going to get some things wrong because this system has never been tried before, and there should have been an appeals process clearly explained for that day so that when you go into school or get your results emails for you, you can submit an appeal in the same way you go through clearing. This level of uncertainty doesn't help the government's education policy, it doesn't help students, it doesn't help teachers, it's not raising it's doing nobody any favours. They're not helping themselves and they're certainly not helping us. I'm just baffled.
I am mindful of the very serious, imminent consequence of this tonight and tomorrow, which is there will be a group of students who will be vulnerable. That you know, in any cohort of any age group in society, there are some people who have mental health issues.
Yeah.
And some of those people will be students. And what they will have been hanging on to is the prospect of appeal. And they will have been told that they could appeal based on their mocks. And that might have buoyed some of those students up. That might have given them a sense of security. And to rip that away within hours of promising it, what does Ofqual think they are doing with our young students and the consequences of this?
It's genuinely not. I mean, I consider myself quite lucky because I've basically looked at this and gone, I'm going to fight. And it is much easier to motivate yourself when you feel like, you know, I'm fighting both for myself but also for my friends. And so I you know, and I have a family support network, but I'm very, very conscious of the fact that, you know, there are students at my school, students that I know at other schools who don't have that. And especially if you're a high achieving child in a low achieving school, which I am one, and...
You're what? Sorry, what did you say, Isabel?
A high achieving child in a low achieving school.
Okay.
And it either gives you a lot of confidence because you just learn to just kind of do your own thing, or, you know, your academics become how you define your self-worth. And if you've done that and you get like this, you're going to really, really struggle. And I don't think that's like a weakness in our generation. I don't think there's a point where like you just like, you know, chill out and move on. I think resilience is important, but I also think, you know, education is important. And if education is important, and I'm staggered that, you know, anybody thinks it's not, then it should be treated with more respect. Our teachers should have been treated with more respect. The grades they predicted, they didn't pluck them from thin air. They had to go through an assessment process. They had to submit grades that were rigorous, and you needed a standardisation measure. But I have lost a place at Cambridge because of the performance of the year before, and that's not fair. It doesn't reflect my abilities or my teachers' hard work.
So
I'm
let me find out a
furious.
little bit. Let me find out a little bit more about you then. So what were your predicted grades?
Okay, so my predicted grades on my UCAS form that goes in October were A star AA. My mock results that I sat in January were A star AA. My teacher assessment grades, so the ones, my CAGs, the ones they thought I'd get, were 3 A stars. And the grades the system has given me is A, B, B. And the only possible reason for that, based on my academic history, is that they've looked at the fact that no child in the year before, in the last 15 years at my school, has been to Oxbridge and gone, well, her teachers must be lying. I can assure you they're not lying.
You go to a comprehensive school?
I do. I go to a comprehensive school in a grammar school area. So they've siphoned off all the really academic kids at the age of 11 anyway, which makes it even more difficult.
Do you think there's a glass ceiling on you?
No, because I'm on the phone to you now. And I've emailed the Financial Times, I've spoken to my county newspaper. There is no glass ceiling I am willing to put up with. But it does feel that, if you're a child who's had to put up with more than I have, if your parents are first-generation immigrants, and it's even worse for kids up north, that's even worse. It's worse if you're black. It's worse if you belong to a minority. The kind of school I went to. But that's not the case for everyone, and we shouldn't be having to prove everything because we've already done the work.
Listening to you and looking at the history of your grades, A star, A in your mocks, teachers' predictions, A star, A, and they've given you Bs.
Yeah.
They're attempting to put a glass ceiling in you. That algorithm is partly defining you because you're going to a comprehensive school.
Yes,
it is attempting to define children. Often children who go to comprehensive schools will be from working class areas. We know this. That's where those schools are situated. And that algorithm, we sometimes, and I think the media have a vital role to play here, that, it is too easy to blame an algorithm. The people who are standing over that algorithm are the politicians we elect, is the government, are bodies who are accountable. It is not a computer system doing this to pupils like you. It is the government doing this. It is chief executives. It is the people in these organisations standing over that algorithm who are doing this to people like you.
At the end of the day, you don't elect a computer. And I read somewhere that the National Statistics Office offered their help to the government in designing this algorithm, and the government accepted on the condition that they sign a 3-year gagging order. And the Royals, I can't remember what it's called, the statistics agency, a respected statistics agency, then refused because they'd have to sign a 3-year gagging order. What kind of democracy is that?
I want to spend another few minutes with you. I find you compelling.
Thank you.
And I want you to have a huge voice on this station tonight.
Thank you so much.
You wanted to go to Cambridge?
Yes, I did.
To study what?
To study English.
What do you want to go on and be?
I don't know. I've considered being a diplomat, working in the charity sector, working with refugees. I've considered going into journalism. The last 24 hours has been a bit of a crash course in that, I'm going to be honest. And I do also really enjoy academics. I wanted to go somewhere where, the challenge of going to a large comprehensive school and wanting to be academically excellent is that it's quite isolating,
Did you have the option of going to one of the higher performing schools?
I did. I was 11, and my mum actually put me in for the 11 plus, and I failed by 1 mark. And she was like, well, we could appeal. And I was like, I don't want to, because I have a brother, and all the grammar schools near us are single-sex schools, and my large comprehensive school has a very good arts department, and it had a theatre. And I like drama, and I was like, that's what I want. So I went, and it was really hard initially, because I just felt like I was speaking the same language as my teachers, but a different language to my classmates. But you kind of get over that. But you're always the most academic child in the room. And people tend to think that that's really great, and sometimes it is. But the reason I wanted to attend Cambridge is I want to be challenged. I want to have an opportunity to excel in an environment where that is more normal.
Were you offered a conditional place at Cambridge?
I was the only child in my year to receive an offer from either Oxford or Cambridge, and it was a conditional offer for A-star AA, which is the lowest they go, and I was on track to meet that.
So you will have been to Cambridge and done an interview with them?
Yes.
You and I have some similarities. You won't know anything about me. I was born in a working class area. I failed my 11 plus. And I went to Cambridge and did that interview and got offered a place.
Did you go?
I didn't. I didn't get the grades at university to go. But I know what that interview's like. And that interview is tough. It's really tough.
It's really tough, and I feel the need for the sake of complete honesty here, that my dad is from a very working class bit of Yorkshire, but I'm sitting here in Kent, and my mum is a nurse, my dad is an engineer. They both went to university, so I'm quite lucky. I don't feel like I really have the right to be, I'm not sure I would qualify as working class in a census, but I am just, and that sounds awful, but I'm bringing it up because I don't want to claim any disadvantage I do not have a right to.